Hey, what's up? Left, right, out again. October 5th. If you were alive yesterday, you realized that Facebook was down for a number of hours. Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram went down, and you could go on like a GoDaddy or GoDaddy.com type thing, and I guess you could actually find Facebook for so there was some weirdness going on there, and employees were locked out. It was very interesting because here's the way I look at it. I don't want to go. There's a lot of people have talked about it. It's been talked over and over again, but I want to just point out some interesting happenings at the same time or within a day of this. So one, you've probably seen the 60 Minutes gal that the whistleblower, which to me it seems farcical. Seems like a setup almost. Maybe she is a whistleblower, but she's calling for more. What she was whistleblowing on is the lack of control over opinions on the internet, which, anybody that's using Facebook or her can't argue that point, that they've let up on some of their algorithm restrictions since the election. Now, I mean, we can agree with her on the mental health issues, that's for sure. But anyway, that seems more like a setup. There is a real whistleblower, and you can go to like Project Veritas and see what he has to say about it. And that was relatively recent as well. But then at the same time, apparently on certain nefarious web pages, there was about 1.5 billion people's data was for sale that was mined, or they call it, apparently it was scraped, which so they said scraping this information from Facebook. It could be a hack. I would tend to lean towards more of a hack if it's information that's worth anything, because there's only so much. I mean, you can gather a lot of information by going through the internet, public documents, and put profiles of people together, no doubt. But 1.5 billion, and the way it made news, to me, it seems like it might have been a hack. And you correlate this with everything else that's gone on in Facebook yesterday. It appears to me that's how I'd lean it. If I was developing a hypothesis of what actually happened, that seems to be a hack, and they were trying to sell this information. 1.5 billion people, and you'd think that out of 1.5 billion people, there's a good, probability that you might be one of them. That your information is out there and is being sold on, I guess, supposed dark web. But we could only hope for Facebook's destruction, to be totally honest. I mean, it's one of the biggest purveyors of misinformation or controlled information to people. It also heightens, to me, any sort of proclivities to mental illness, Instagram especially, but Facebook, through their how their website operates, one, by controlling what you see, but two, by people seeing, basically a wave top view of other people's lives, and or a lot of people, can't handle that. They think that their life is crap because they see people living this great life, when in reality, most of them have their own problems. But you don't see that because everybody portrays, they have a social media portrayal of life, and it's just not healthy. That's one of the reasons why most of those Facebook executives don't let their children on there. But anyway, so you got in Instagram portrays a very, fictitious model of two women and what we should expect women to be like. And one, it's disgusting the way they incentivize certain women to be like how they display themselves. So we can only hope that it'd go under. But let's go on to something else. So this has struck me as interesting. The DOJ, Eric Garland, they are looking into dissenting parents when it comes to school boards and stuff, and threatening. So why is the DOJ involved in this? I think it stems from a North Carolina school board deal when it comes to CRT. So why is the DOJ get involved? Do you think there'd be more pressing issues for the Department of Justice to get involved into, and that these would be more state matters? It lends itself to a higher theory on why they're pushing these agendas. But you should look into that, because apparently Eric Garland's headed this up. They are going to be coming out with a task force here within the couple days, looking into apparently parents. So you are on the weapons. You are on the end of the weaponized government, anybody that, it's basically a political tool now to squelch opposition to whatever it might be, mandates of whatever ilk or propaganda curriculums. So good luck with that. It's very disconcerting and depressing at times, because you think about all the things that are going on in this country. Like, they could be looking into? They could be looking into some of the corruption at the highest levels. They could be looking at General Milley's calls, perhaps. Maybe some of the weirdness going around with Fed presidents. I know the SEC would be the one to deal with that, but I mean, there's a lot of things going on at the DOJ. They need to be looking internally too, with all the scandals that have happened at the FBI, especially. Maybe they can look into that, like what's going on there. I mean, there's a lot of things they could be doing rather than going after parents. There's also an interesting thing I'll bring up, because I'll push, like, the Project Veritas had a pretty interesting whistleblower on regarding big pharma, particularly Pfizer, and what's going on there. And you just think about it logically, and they just, things, usually when you use logic, it seems to work out. You just have a very basic understanding of biology, and you can use logic and reason. You can deduce certain things or postulate certain things that tend to be right. And that's how I've gone about this whole thing, and I've been right every step of the way. And I've always thought this, and some of these guys have actually, which that's a whole nother thing. You look at it, and the Pfizer scientists, like, what are they? Some of these guys look like a low-level street dealer, and another guy looks like, I can't believe they're scientists. Or these are the scientists that are developing these treatments or vaccines. They look weird. I mean, maybe they're intelligent, but they did, when they were on video, it was pretty interesting, because some of them just stated that pretty much the obvious is that the one gentleman who has a weird gold necklace and he looked like some Kyle monster drinker. But anyway, it punch walls. But anyway, like, he stated, he's like, well, if you have caught the disease, we'll call it, and you probably have a greater protection than when you got the jibber jabber in your arm. And that just makes sense, because you think about what that thing does. The jibber jabber that goes into your arm, it gives information to a cell, which the cell then makes this small little part of the protein on this disease and presents it on your cell, so that you have an antigenic response from your immune system. It presents it to it, so it recognizes it, creates the antibodies for it. But let's say you get the actual disease. Well, there's other places that are antigenic on that disease itself. I'm just calling it the disease, what it is. Just because YouTubes and all this, this flag stuff, this flag on their system, and you can get strikes or whatever. But anyway, so when you get the actual thing, there's more antigenic spots on this than just one little subunit of a protein, right? So you develop a greater immune response, because your body can now recognize different pieces of it, right? That just makes sense. This guy pretty much said that. And my thought all along was, well, if you're just using this one subunit of a protein, with this RNA, it mutates, as we've seen, but that's just been known scientifically just to mutate significantly. We've seen in other viruses or diseases, So if it happens to mutate in that one spot, your supposed treatments aren't going to be as effective as somebody that just gets it, right? So it just made sense. And this guy explained it, and then the other gentleman went through and talked about how, like, pretty much there's a lot of corruption going on there, which makes sense. I've been in some of these organizations where it becomes almost like a group think, and you have people in certain positions that will squelch any dissent. In fact, you have like little meetings in the morning about, get everybody in line about how you wouldn't think that would happen in America. You think there'd be a lot more independent thinkers, but when you're in a job and there's a paycheck, you fall in line. A lot of people just fall right in line, right? And that's just an unfortunate reality to it. So this guy was talking about that and how these guys are just making money hand over fist, which obviously, when we look at it logically, would make sense. Well, one, it's like the government seems to be pushing one of these things, and it seems to be tied in. So this is not like capitalism by any means, because these guys are literally making money off the government, which is us, pushing and in a sense advocating, mandating the use of a product while these guys are benefiting from it, and then also squelching any alternative treatments, which you can, whether you agree or disagree with that, we should be looking for alternative treatments, right? Something more effective, which we know of one for sure, and possibly other ones, but one for sure, and there's been a huge restriction on that, which doesn't make sense. It makes sense in the beginning because they have emergency use authorization for their treatment, and under that, you're supposedly not supposed to have any. That's only emergency use authorization is only granted if you don't have any other treatment. So then you have a media blackout. So you have like this cross membership of propaganda that's pushing towards you. So you only think to control the narrative and to make sure that you don't realize that there is something else. And they put little bastions of seeds of doubt in there, and keep repeating it. It's basically a Joseph Goebbels type propaganda machine on steroids, because they've learned a lot more. But it's interesting how that goes about, and how there's some of these people that are up there. Let's talk like a Fauci or whatever. That he's probably just I've seen it in some other high level positions where you're just kind of surrounded by people that are yes people, right? Anybody that dissents with you, because you're around all these yes people. And then there's this guy over here that has a differing opinion. And when you have all these yes people around you, then that guy, especially when they esteem you in the level of power, then that guy over there, he must be crazy, because whatever, I am the science, type thing. So you get this weird psychological effect when you're in a position of power and you don't have people that are constantly challenging you. When you have people that are just constantly praising you, you tend to not take criticism very well, and we can see that with him. And he's just constantly lying. I mean, they don't even admit to it. We might actually trust these people a little bit more if they just admit when they're wrong. They don't. But the other, I'll circle back around. The Facebook whistleblower, there's a lot of weird things going on with that. They're claiming no malicious activity, but we'll see. To go into the, Eric Garland, the corruption, what they could be doing. One of the things I do agree on with Elizabeth Warren is she's calling the SEC to investigate the Fed, and maybe the DOJ can get kind of involved in that. I mean, I know the SEC, that's their purview, but at the same time, they could, at least assist them, or they, there's a lot of other things DOJ can do besides looking at people. But okay, let's go into economics, because this is crazy. I'm looking at, let's look at the markets. The markets are up. But the interesting thing about the way the markets are up today is oil is shooting up almost 80. It's $79 a barrel. Bonds selling off. We're over 1.5% on the 10-year, which, that's, you would think, because there's been some oscillations. It's been moving pretty darn significantly, and there's no reverberations in the market. There's nothing going on there with regards to that. Yellen's coming out saying you're going to face a recession if you don't pass this debt limit hike, which I'd say, if that is the case, then they're pretty much admitting that the economy itself is on a disastrous path anyway. It's on a disastrous foundation, that the whole thing is, propped up by government spending. I mean, come on, dude, this is, can we get over this? So I say don't raise it. Let's see what happens. They can still pay it. They get money in. They're like they're a racket. They get money in every month. They just have to prioritize it now towards servicing the debt, which that's what we should do. So, I mean, you can think about it logically. It doesn't make any sense. Let's raise the debt ceiling so we can take on more debt so we can pay off the debt. I don't understand. I never got their logic on that, and this doesn't make any sense. If you didn't know anything about anything, you just look at your own life and how that would make sense is beyond me. What else was there? There was something else I didn't write anything down. I should have, but there's something else. Oh, cryptocurrencies. This is pretty interesting because we have another like Dogecoin type thing that's going out there. Shib Inu has just been skyrocketing lately. That's an interesting thing, and I don't know the use for that coin. It's not even. It's a token. Dogecoin. Doge is a coin. This is a token. It's based off the same like animal, but it's I'm watching the price action on that stuff. It's pretty interesting because it's up like over 100%. It's one of those, things, those meme type coins is going up. And, I'm not saying investment advice, but it seems as though like these type of things, in an economy like that, you see these big pumps. And like a Bitcoin and all that, they seem to be more stable and more there's more utility behind it, and Ethereum and maybe a Litecoin or any of those things. But like these tokens, these Dogecoin maybe a little bit, but they, that's like almost like a fiat system because they constantly print, it constantly expands. And this token, Shib Inu, they had like, I don't know, there's trillions of them out there, hundreds of trillions, but it's finite. Now, I don't know what the use case is. Maybe you can accept payments. Maybe there will be one. But it seems like this thing is starting to take off. And we're seeing a lot of investors get into it. It's being taken up by Coinbase. Might even see Robinhood. And once that happens, it'll be interesting. I'm not saying go invest in this because I don't know the use case for it. But you see when you have mass amounts of people putting whatever the money in, since this is such a low price thing, you can even get regular retail people going in there and buying millions of tokens and pushing the price up further. So this could be like a Dogecoin mania again, or it could be AMC or GME type thing. If it takes off, we'll see what happens. If one of these guys tweets about it, we can see an even greater explosion in this thing. So I point that out because of it's the irrational exuberance of what we're dealing with in the economy when people start just piling money in just some offbeat attempt to become wealthy. It's something that I don't see the use case. I see, Bitcoin and all these other ones that seem to be, I see the use of them. I've used them myself, but I don't know what exactly this token is there to achieve that these other token or coins are not achieving. You know what I mean? So I don't understand it, but if that's the way people want to roll, whatever. And there will be a lot of people made rich from that. Even now that it's went up 100%, there's probably some guys that went, I know personally because I follow stuff on Reddit that there's probably some guys that, they obviously doubled their money and, looking pretty good and pretty happy about it. I mean, that's speculation. That's not really investment. So it's a speculative play. But these things I watch because it is part of that late stage economic cycle. It's a collapse, which I believe we've been in a depression since, God knows, at least 2008, maybe even before. And these are just cyclical trends and the manipulation of data and whatnot. Oh, that was the other thing. So they came out and said that one of the Fed presidents came out and said that he anticipates inflation, or what they call price increases, to go down by 2%, which I would say, yeah, fat chance at this point. We're seeing the shortages increase. You go to like a Walmart's or whatever, things are not there. Prices are rising even there. And maybe it will, but the prices have already reset, which I call a revaluation, because they're like, oh, well, it'll go up and then it will just not go up as much. Where the prices aren't going down, it's like, well, we need either increase supply or we need to stabilize the currency or something. Because to me, that's a re-evaluation. Then you have all these other these other incongruities in the economy, whether it be supply shortages, and then you have weird cases of demand spikes in certain areas and demand destruction. So it's almost nonsensical. It's hard for anybody to really follow because we're so far down the road of any kind of rationality in a supposed free economic system, which we aren't. We're living under at least half of the economy. I'd say half of every transaction is socialized, whether it be because you're dealing with the government, whether it be you're dealing with the Federal Reserve and a fiat money system. Local, or the combination of free enterprise entanglement within the government. So government, federal, sanctioned oligarchy of banking system. So you are in a socialized system, which is vestiges of a free enterprise system, and it's ever increasingly, especially as government is ever increasingly in the capital markets with the debt or whatnot, and other things of that nature, regulatory burdens or whatnot, then you're ever increasingly in a socialized system. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there. because I'm getting like brain fog on this, and it's just like depressing even looking at this stuff anymore. But I'm, like I said, hedge your bets on certain things. I don't know if this market move up is anything but like some last ditch reversal. I'm not saying there's going to be a crash because monetary policy is still up there. If anything, if there's any kind of real correction, it'll be just an excuse for the Fed to maintain its purchases of assets, or debt, and it's steep in the debt market already, but maintain its levels. But if they do anything, i.e., they start tapering, and we see with this debt limit thing, we're going to see, we should see a correction. But we're in a precarious situation economically. Like I said, you can fall, you can crash up, crash down. We'll see, because there's also another hat. So we look at that, but we look at the consumer side of things, because that's where a lot of the monetary expansion is their consumer loans and leveraging through that sector, the fractional reserve system. And if that starts wiping out, then you can see a real crash. But I don't know if that's going to happen. I know Robert Kiyosaki they said that he said October is the crash. Man, I could see a correction, but I don't know if it's the crash yet. Like, you might have a mini crash, but because you just don't know. There's so many moving parts right now. There's so many bad segments. It could happen. I don't think so. I think this is going to catch everybody off guard. Like, there's going to be one seminal moment on a real crash, where something just happens. Like, all of a sudden, a company that you just believe that was normally a darling is just going to go bankrupt, and there's a systemic risk there, or there's going to be some kind of disaster of some sort that will affect a number of industries. And then we might see, an actual correction, or you see the Fed, actually jack up interest rates. But I doubt they'll even do that. If anything, they'll go down. They might try 1.25% and then see what happens. But I doubt they'll even, because last time they made 2.5. So presumably, you look at the amount of debt or amount of expansion that they've had on their balance sheet, how leveraged the economy is now, and all the misallocations of capital. I can't see them getting past 1.5%, even if they tried. 1.5% would send this thing tailing, because the way you'd see that is, and you can see that when the 10-year is up so high, when you look at some of the, like the NASDAQ, especially when you look at the rate of returns or the dividend yields on some of these companies in relationship to the 10-year, and there's a big risk juxtaposition there. So once you get to a certain level, the risk of investing in these other companies doesn't outweigh the reward or the risk of getting into a 10-year that's close to 2%, or let's say. That seems to be a pretty good level. If it hit 2% on the 10-year, that you might start seeing some of these highly leveraged companies start selling off. But we'll see. Anyway, I'll talk to you later. Peace.